Hey guys, my name is Lauren and you're on my YouTube channel, Not Your Clinical Supervisor. Today we're talking all about self-disclosure, when to use it, why we use it, when to not use it, how it can be helpful, how it can be harmful, and then also some tips and tricks to help you if you do decide to use it in your clinical practice. If you are new here, my name is Lauren. I am a board-approved supervisor, licensed therapist, and private practice owner. And on my channel, I talk all about different things that you should be aware of during your supervision experience. We cover a large amount of different mental health topics. We talk about skills and tools that you can use in your clinical practice. And my hope is that this information gives you a one-stop shop to gather all the information you need to help you feel confident and competent in your clinical practice. As always, nothing I say in this video constitutes clinical supervision. Please seek clinical consultation from your supervisor about specific cases or questions that you have. You deserve to have good clinical supervision and support. Alrighty, let's get into self-disclosure. I oftentimes see, especially with people who are pre-licensed or in residency, that there is a lot of worry about self-disclosure. And I also understand that some people, this is not even on your radar. So if it's not, there's still helpful information in here for you as well. What I want people to understand first is that self-disclosure can be really helpful. And there's a reason why therapists use it in practice, and there's a time and place for it. There are also times and places where it is not called for, and we're going to get into that as well today. I think that self-disclosure, when used appropriately, can be a really incredible clinical tool, and that when it's not used appropriately, it can actually do a lot of harm. So we want to make sure that we're aware of the difference, what's helpful versus what's harmful, as well as how to go about utilizing this in your practice and feeling confident in your ability to use this the appropriate way. So what is self-disclosure? Very basic. Self-disclosure is disclosing something about yourself in the clinical work. So if you're working with a client, typically it's what the client has going on. It's their agenda, it's what they're talking about. And sometimes there might be an opportunity for you to self-disclose, which would be you disclosing something about yourself, maybe an interest, a personal experience, something that's relevant to them. And we want to do this in a way where it helps improve the work in some way. And so it can be used that way, and unfortunately, I've seen people not use it that way. But self-disclosure is you simply disclosing something about yourself when working with a client. I have seen this skill be incredibly helpful, and I want to talk today about when to use it and how to use it so it does help the work with your clients. The first thing to consider when thinking about self-disclosure is, am I potentially going to be doing this in a way that helps build a relationship or rapport with the client or make me relatable? If so, then it's likely that this actually could be a really good time to do it. Now, we want to be careful of what we're sharing because it's not about us, and you have a right to privacy, so don't ever share something that you don't feel comfortable with. But this would be a time where you actually have an opportunity to lean into the relationship and to share a little bit about yourself in a way where you seem more relatable. Because let's face it, someone's coming to see you for therapy or services and you're a stranger. They don't know you. They shouldn't know you. They don't know you. And they really are having to put a lot of trust and faith that you understand where they're coming from. But naturally, that can just be hard to do. And so being able to self-disclose actually can help build rapport and show a client I'm relatable. A lot of times clients also have this preconceived idea that no one understands me, or I'm in this alone, or you could never understand what I'm going through. And while no, we can't put ourselves right there in the client's shoes, we've got our own perspectives, our own experiences, our own feelings, we can relate in some ways to potentially what they're going through. Maybe they're a single parent and so are you, and that's something that you could share with them and let them know, hey, I understand how hard this can be. I'm a single parent as well. Or maybe that looks like they've been through a medical procedure recently and it's been a really, really hard recovery, and maybe you have experienced something similar. There's a way to share that in a, hey, I'm a human, I've been through these things too, my life is not perfect and we can relate on this. So the first example of a time when this would be appropriate is if you feel like that your self-disclosure helps build rapport, helps the therapeutic relationship to build and strengthen, helps you to seem relatable, or for the client to feel like, hey, I am not the only one going through this, because all that comes back to rapport and building a good, solid relationship where they feel confident in being able to share things with you and they trust you that you're going to be helpful for them. The second time where I would say self-disclosure is really appropriate is if doing so helps you move the work forward. I mentioned this a minute ago. Sometimes clients get stuck or they get very just stuck in their mind of no one understands, this is never going to get better, I can't get through this. And so sometimes self-disclosure can be helpful in helping move the work forward and get the client unstuck and can help them understand, hey, there is a different way to look at this. And hey, I see you and I hear you. And also, I know that this can be something that you address. I know this can be something that you change. I know that this feeling could potentially be temporary. And being able to say, hey, I'm going to self-disclose in an effort to help move the work forward. Now, it might not help move the work forward, and that's a gamble that we have to take, but we want to do it in good faith of, hey, I'm doing this because I genuinely believe this is going to help move the work forward. It's going to help them reach their goals. It's going to help them feel unstuck. I'm doing this with intentionality of, I think this is going to help us continue to drive the forces forward and get you to where you want to be. And then the third thing that I would say would be a reason to self-disclose would be for the client's benefit. So obviously it's not for our benefit, and I shouldn't be self-disclosing for anything related to me, and I shouldn't gain anything from the self-disclosure. It should be about helping the client. And so like I just mentioned with the other two specific examples, if I'm going to self-disclose, I want to make sure that that benefits the client. So I'm sharing only pertinent need-to-know information. I am sharing information that is helpful and relevant to them and what they're talking about and what they're working on, and it gives them added value. I should not be sharing things that give no added value that's not for their benefit, because then that means I'm likely sharing it for my own benefit. And this isn't my therapy session. This isn't my counseling appointment. This is not for me. This is for them. So we want to make sure that it's for their benefit and it's in their best interest. And it's also in our best interest to share this with them. And it does this in a way where we say, hey, you're still the topic of focus, and you're the one who is the main character here. And I just want to share this with you because I think it's going to add value or benefit you in some way. So those are the three reasons that I would say go ahead, self-disclose, because it actually could do a lot of helpful things for the client and also for your all's therapeutic relationship. And I myself also use self-disclosure at times if I feel like it benefits the client, if it moves the work forward, and if it helps to build rapport. So keep that in mind, because this can absolutely be really, really helpful. Now, self-disclosure can also be harmful, and we have to always be aware that as mental health professionals, what you say and how you say it can be helpful or it can be harmful. We are to do no harm. We should not be causing harm to our clients. Our clients have enough going on. We're supposed to be a safe space, someone they can trust, someone they can confide in, someone that they can go to for help. And so I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything intentionally or unintentionally to harm the client. And sometimes self-disclosure, especially if it's not done in the right way, can actually be harmful for the client. So I want to keep that in mind, especially when I'm thinking, should I self-disclose? Should I not self-disclose? Does it fit the criteria that I just previously mentioned? Could it potentially do harm? Would be another question to ask yourself. And let's talk a little bit about how exactly it does harm so you have a better understanding of what I'm saying. So it's about the client, right? They're there to talk about things that are pertinent to them, that they want to work on, that are going to be helpful for them to reach their goals. I mean, it's their appointment. It's their session. And so I want to make sure that when I'm self-disclosing, I'm doing it in a way where I feel like I'm adding that value to the work and that it stays relevant to the work. It starts to become potentially harmful if I self-disclose and I self-disclose something that is very big, maybe traumatic, maybe something I'm going through actively, maybe something I have not worked through. And all of a sudden the session starts to shift from the client and what they have going on to me and my response and my stress. We absolutely want to stay away from that potential scenario at all costs. It's not about me. And I have heard some people say that they've previously seen therapists where they felt like the therapist talked a lot about themselves. And that makes that makes me cringe because they are not paying to talk to the therapist about the therapist's life. That's for the therapist to do on her own time in her own therapy or his own therapy. So we don't want to get into a situation where we're coming across as I'm talking about me or I'm making this about me, because that is harmful. And then I would say, no, don't self-disclose if there's even a potential for it to get into those waters. Also, if you are going to self-disclose, I really encourage you to self-disclose only very specific, kind of condensed information about what it is that you're going to self-disclose. The client does not need to know about the intricate details of the trauma that you went through. They don't need to know about your traumatic birth experience in detail, right? Like, that's just not need to know information. Self-disclosure should be done in a way where I'm self-disclosing to you, I'm giving you information, but I'm giving you a very condensed version, and I should be able to have this conversation with you without me being unable to regulate my emotions. So if you are really resonating with what the client's saying and you've been through a similar experience, or you're going through one right now, and you're thinking to yourself, maybe I should self-disclose, I think that them knowing this about me could be helpful. I caution you to ask yourself this next question is, am I capable of talking about this in a way that maintains focus on the client and does not in any way put me in a situation where I might be unable to cope with and process my emotions, and to be able to maintain full attention to the client? Because if I've decided to self-disclose something and it's actually really traumatic for me and I start to cry, all of a sudden I'm not containing my emotions. This becomes about me, and clients can start to feel like I need to now be emotionally available and supportive to my therapist. No, no, it ain't about me. That should never happen. I want to make sure that I'm self-disclosing in a way that says, hey, I can relate to this, and I think that this would be helpful for you, but you do not need to worry about me. You do not need to try to take care of me. You do not need to comfort me. I'm not saying this because I need your validation or I need your support or anything like that. Again, this needs to be client-centered, so it needs to be about them. So if you feel like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have this conversation without becoming angry or stressed or focusing more on me than the client or being sad or whatever, then I would say don't do it. There's lots of other ways to build rapport and to seem relatable and to move the work forward without going down that path, because at that point that becomes something that you do that's actually potentially harmful, not helpful. And in line with that, I really want to stress, please take care not to overshare. We as therapists are human. We have our own experiences, we've got our own stuff going on, we've got our own stressors, like, we are human. And I don't think that it's helpful for a client for us to show up as a very sterile, robotic, closed off person who is expecting them to be open and vulnerable and share all these things, while I am so closed off and so just robotic with it that it seems like I'm almost not human. Your humanness, what makes you human, your relatability, your emotions, your personality, these things actually are really helpful to the therapeutic work with clients. Even if you're not providing therapy, it's still nice to be able to feel that way if you're working with someone in a case management capacity, in an advocacy capacity, in whatever setting you work in. So I don't want you to be so closed off that you're like, I can never self-disclose because I'm worried it could do harm. Because being that sterile person can be a hard person to relate to. But I also don't recommend going down the route of I'm oversharing. And I think it can be just naturally confusing, especially if you're in residency or you're in supervision and you're not licensed yet, or even if you're a newly licensed professional, to really figure out, how do I understand and identify what's too much versus what's too little sharing. And you have to be the judge of that for yourself, but I really caution you to not overshare. And so again, going back to something I said, pertinent need to know information. Give them the gist, give them the cliff notes. Keep it simple, keep it very straightforward, keep it connected to the work that you're trying to do, and always bring it back to what they're working on, their experience, how they're feeling, so it doesn't become about me. If I get into a situation where I'm starting to talk in detail about things I've been through, I'm oversharing. If I get into a situation where I'm kind of running on and all of a sudden I've been talking about myself for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm probably oversharing. So I want to keep it short, brief, concise, and in a way that helps the client and relates to the goals and things that we're trying to accomplish. Now, I also see where sometimes people get very worried about this and they say things like, I never self-disclose. And I can absolutely understand just the nervousness because I've now talked about ways that it could be harmful. I've talked about maybe becoming emotionally dysregulated. I've talked about making it about yourself. I've talked about the client feeling like that they need to care for you or be sympathetic towards you or support you or anything like that. So I know that it might be kind of off-putting at this point to think, yeah, I should still do this. But I want to really caution you to not make this something that's black and white, where it's like, I always self-disclose or I never self-disclose. I think this actually is something that you need to evaluate on a case-by-case basis and really think about, is this something that's going to help the client in some way? Because being so closed off and being that person that's like, I'm never going to self-disclose, one, I don't know if it's realistic because never say never. You never know. You might find yourself one day going, oh, I really feel like it would be helpful to share this. So never say never. The second thing is that when we never self-disclose, we limit ourselves with the ability to build rapport, to meet the client where they are, to tune into what's happening in the moment, and to provide an experience for them that actually could be therapeutic or even helpful. So I don't want you to close yourself off from this completely, because then you're taking away that opportunity, and everybody is a case-by-case basis. And there's going to be some clients out there that what they really need from you is to feel like, hey, I'm not alone, or hey, this person can understand me. I'll give you a couple examples. So let's say the first person is a mom and they are really struggling because they are trying to juggle work and kids, and they feel like they're not getting helped out at home, and they're feeling touched out, and they're starting to feel really frustrated, but they also feel guilty for even feeling frustrated. And there's a lot happening in the moment. Now, if you're not a mom or if you're not a parent, for some clients, they do not care. And for other clients, that can feel unrelatable, like you don't really know what I'm saying, you don't understand my experience. Now, if you are a parent, then that actually could be a good opportunity to lean in and validate, hey, yeah, it is hard. I find myself frustrated with my kids sometimes, and I don't think that that makes you a bad parent. In fact, I think that makes you a relatable, very real parent. And all of a sudden, I've now said something a little bit about me. I haven't overshared. I haven't given them all the details about all my kids and everything like that. All I've said is, hey, yeah, no, that's really relatable. And also, I think we need to look at this from a different perspective. And so now what I have done is I have very delicately, very gently, and not even really obviously self-disclosed. And I have done that in a way that is intended to help them feel like I'm relatable and to kind of challenge some of the beliefs and thoughts they're having and to help with a therapeutic relationship. If self-disclosure is done in a healthy, appropriate way, that's client and treatment centered, it's sometimes not even that noticeable to the client. Like they notice, hey, they shared that with me, but again, I'm being time sensitive, I'm not oversharing, and so I'm just kind of looping it in and doing it in a way that continues to dominate a very them-centered conversation. I've just put this little nugget in there to help move the conversation forward and to help keep us moving in the direction that they want to go in. So it doesn't have to be a big conversation. It doesn't have to be a wait, let's stop and let me talk about me for a second. I think actually the best way to do that is to just kind of weave it in and keep it moving. That way it stays client-centered. You don't have to worry about, am I making this about me? Am I going too far into this? Am I oversharing? Is this taking too long? I'm just kind of weaving it in there and it continues the conversation forward. Another example might be you are working with a client, and let's say your all's ages are very different. Let's say you're working with a teen and you're in your adulthood, middle adulthood, let's say. And they're talking about how it's so frustrating. Their sister is always obnoxious and bothering them and reading their journal and not giving them any privacy, and they just cannot stand their sister. Now, you don't have to be a teenager at the same time as this client to potentially have a similar experience. Or maybe you have siblings and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I've been there. That sucks. And so it actually can be helpful because all of a sudden I'm starting to think, okay, how do I relate to the client? How do I move this work forward? And so I might say something like, I hear you. That is so, so frustrating. I have felt that before with my siblings, especially when I was your age and I really wanted my privacy. What do you need your sister to stop doing in order for you to feel less frustrated with her? And again, all of a sudden, we're still talking about you. I've given you a little nugget of information about me, but I haven't made it so engrossed in me that you're getting lost in your own therapy session or you're getting lost in my stuff. So again, small moments where we can kind of weave that in there. Now, another example is maybe let's say you want to share a little bit more about that, something maybe a little bit more personal than you simply saying like, hey, I'm a mom too, or hey, I felt frustrated at my siblings. Let's say, for example, you're talking with somebody and they have a medical condition that they are really struggling to cope with. It's very debilitating and they live with chronic pain. And let's say in this example, you as well suffer from chronic pain. Maybe you don't have the same diagnosis, you have a different diagnosis, but you as well struggle with chronic pain. This is a great thing to self-disclose, as long as you're doing it in the ways that I've outlined. Now, I might share a little bit more in that example of like, hey, no, I feel for you. I can understand actually how hard this is because while I don't have the diagnosis that you have, I do have this diagnosis over here and I too struggle with chronic pain. And I know that it's a battle daily sometimes. And I see you and I hear you. And I think you're doing a really great job. So I've self-disclosed a little bit more. I've given a little bit more information about me. And I've done this in a way that's relatable. It makes me look human. It makes me look like, hey, no, I don't just hear you. I see you in a way where I've been you. I've been in that situation. I can resonate with you in those ways. And I'm saying this because I don't want you to feel alone. And I think that you not feeling so alone and being able to relate to me could actually help us in our therapeutic relationship. Share as much as you want. Share as little as you want. But that's an example of how if you share a little bit more, it's still not necessarily oversharing, as long as you're keeping it within the parameters that we've talked about. Now, everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. I know that for some people, they're like, I really don't want to self-disclose at all. I'm never going to do it. And as I've said today, I caution you on never saying, never. But I also know that this needs to come with your own comfort level. So if there's something that you are thinking about sharing and you're like, I'm not comfortable sharing that, then don't. That is a-okay. There is nothing wrong with that. Just don't share and keep it moving. There's lots of other interventions and strategies you can utilize to continue to move the work forward and build good therapeutic alliance. But if you do want to share, I really encourage you to keep these things in mind and always, always, always do it in a way that benefits the client and keeps the client centered in the conversation. It needs to be about them. It needs to be something that's helpful for them. And if you're even questioning, I don't think this is going to be helpful, then I encourage you to pause, maybe talk to your supervisor, seek some clinical supervision around this, and see if you can feel more confident before moving forward. If you find, I've talked to my supervisor and I don't know if this is going to be helpful, then don't, and just keep moving forward. It's okay. I'm genuinely curious how you feel about self-disclosure. If you've seen it be helpful, if you've seen it not be helpful, what your take is on all of this. So please leave your thoughts in the comments below and let's have a discussion about how this shows up in the therapeutic setting, how it's helpful, and I'm genuinely curious to see what you guys think about all of this. All right, guys, I hope that this was helpful. I hope this gave you some little nuggets to think about to help improve your clinical practice and feel more confident and competent in your supervision experience and then also in your license experience as a licensed professional. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you never miss anything because we cover a full spectrum of mental health topics and all the things that I think are so important for supervisees and licensed professionals to know in order to make sure we're giving the best clinical services as possible and supporting clients in the best ways that we can. Alrighty, guys, until next time, bye.